Welcome to Art with Lórien, the place to reconnect with your divine inner artist and discover the joy of painting outside the lines. And so welcome to my Tools of the Trade series. In this session, I will be exploring paper as a substrate. And so let's get started. So what is a substrate? It's a fancy word that talks about or describes all the types of surfaces that artists use to create art on. So for example, paper, canvas, various boards like masonite or wood or any kind of surface that an artist creates art on, plexi. So those are known as substrates. And so in this session, I'm just going to be explaining and showing and sharing some of the papers that artists use regularly and commonly. And so I'd like to start with describing the three main kind of categories of paper. There's paper that's made from wood, and most of your sketchbooks, for example, your art journals, sketchbooks, mixed media sketchbooks, which is a little bit heavier paper, they are made with wood pulp, and they're all made with they're machine made. So they're fairly thin, and they are, common, and even if they're different weights, like this is a 70-pound weight, which I'll talk about weights in a moment, and this is a little bit thicker weight, it's still made from wood. And also then the watercolor papers. And so to look at these and to take a look at these, we have a couple watercolor papers here that I'll be talking about a little bit more. And then even our Bristol board. And so your basic art papers that are in books that are bound, whether they're wire bound or glue bound, your drawing papers, those are all made from wood. And the second category of paper are papers that are called 100% cotton rag. So they're actually made from cotton, and that's grown, right? And so this is an example of a 100% cotton rag paper. It's a very thick paper. It's a very beautiful paper. It's a printmaking paper, and it has what's called a decal. That's when the edges are kind of left rough. And this is a beautiful art paper. And this paper is great for wet media because it is a very heavy weight. And so this is 100% rag paper. And also we have another example of that. This is 100% rag, but it also has some leaves in it. And then I want to talk about the next category, and that would be coated papers. So this is a vellum. Just an example. It has a design on it, but it's a vellum, and there's many kinds of vellums and many kinds of handmade papers and decorative papers and Japanese papers. I mean, there's paper in and of itself is a huge medium. I mean, it's incredible what you can find with decorative papers, but just the main categories. And then I have rice paper here, and it comes in a roll, and it's made out of rice. So it's kind of grouped in the other or the coated papers, and I'm roughly categorizing these. But the main thing to know is there's wood pulp, cotton rag, and then kind of other coated papers and kind of fine art decorative papers that are handmade, but also with some different elements. Sometimes there's glitter and string and thread and crushed flowers and pressed flowers. I mean, it really is incredible to see what's out there. And then there's this Japanese rice paper. So those are the big categories. Now I want to talk about and show you, talk about the weight a little bit and what you can do and why the weight of paper is important. So here we have these sketchbooks, and they're very lightweight. Like this is a 70-pound, and this is probably about the same. Now, these are really good for, what you would use these lighter weight papers for is for dry media like your pencils, your color pencils, the graphite pencils, charcoal, any of the dry media. These are great for that, and there's a way to make these more thicker, and that'll be in some of my other classes. But that's that. And then there's a heavier weight paper, and these are twice as much, and this is 140 pounds. And this is 70 and this is 140. So what can you do here? So this is a heavy weight. It's a watercolor paper, and this is for dry and wet media. Obviously more wet media. You'd want to invest in this because they are more expensive, and they are called watercolor papers, and I've used these in many of my sessions and episodes, so you're familiar with these if you've been following along. But these are beautifully, they're heavyweight, they don't warp, and especially when you buy them in what's called a block instead of sheets that you pull out or spiral. When you buy them in a block, the block is designed for the artist to create on the block, and so this paper stays in this block, unseparate from all the rest of them. Just it's connected with glue all the way around up until this little opening here, and then this is where you put your palette knife and release the paper. And we've done this before in one of my episodes when I first introduced it. But you basically just take your palette knife and run it through here. You know, it's not sharp, it's not going to cut it. And you go and you find a sheet and just release the paper. It's kind of fun, actually. You cut along, and I've already done that with this one. I'm going to just not do that on this particular pad, but I will in the next one. Or I can, why not? So the reason why these are blocked though is so you can paint on here and it doesn't flip up on the edges, you know, turn up or warp, or you don't need to put tape down or anything. It's already flat, and it's great. You work on a flat surface and it's all like bound. It's bound on there. So if you're going to be doing watercolors and of course gouache, see, I'm just going to cut along here and it releases the paper. And I mean, the palette knife is sharp enough to release the gum, but it doesn't destroy or anything like that. And you only want to use a palette knife. I mean, you could use a dull butter knife as well. And eek. And yeah, so here's our paper. And then sometimes this glue is here, and you can kind of peel this off. I mean, I like to peel it off. It's kind of hard to do that sometimes, though. But you can hear it. You can hear the weight of it. It's a great paper. Okay, so the next paper I would like to talk about, as far as weight goes, is my Bristol board. And Bristol board also is a heavyweight paper. And what is this one? This is a smooth Bristol board. It's 100 pound. And then also in the metric system, there is a correlation. Always there's a correlation. So pounds, and then the metric system is also a big number, 300 grams per square meter. And so you'll always see those two conversions. You'll see the conversions there. So 100 pounds for the Bristol board, 270 grams per square meter. And so if you're in Europe or the UK, you know, or anywhere else where you use the metric system, that is what that, obviously you know that. Bristol board is a great medium. I love it. I think we did many of our color wheels on the Bristol board. So it can hold wet media, but not really like sopping it and getting it soaking wet with sprays or drips or anything like that. Yeah, so now I'd like to talk about the two types of watercolor paper. There's two main types of watercolor paper, and they are cold press and hot press. And so here's an example. This is a hot press paper. It's a watercolor paper, a little bit smaller size. And this is also 140 in weight, I believe. Yep. Usually watercolor paper is. But anyway, so it's smooth. So hot press is smooth. Cold press is rough. Now, Why would you get one over the other? Now this is, it's called the tooth. It's called the tooth. The tooth on the cold pressed paper, the way it's made, it gives it the texture, and that texture kind of grabs onto your medium, just like teeth. So that's called the tooth. Also, canvases have the tooth as well. And then if you gesso and sand your canvas, you can smooth it out and get rid of some of the tooth, at least the texturized tooth. But it gives it like a kind of like a, the tooth gives your surface, your substrate in interaction with the medium, kind of like a latching on factor. It kind of hugs the medium a little bit. And so there's a reason why you would want, of course for aesthetic reasons, a more rough cold pressed paper, and then why you might want a hot pressed paper. Just depends what you're working on. And so just to wrap my brief introduction to paper, the substrate of paper, artist papers. I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to Google and learn more about these papers, to experiment with them. I am going to put a list in the description as usual of all the supplies I showed you and that were presented in this session, in this episode. Thank you for supporting this channel, for those of you who are supporting, and feel free to support if you'd like to keep the arts alive and on the air and out into the airwaves, into people's lives and homes and into your hands and hearts. And so thank you for joining me, and until next time, I'll see you in the studio.